sometimes you just have to call it. So we're out here this morning checking tires. I've got to head to North Carolina right now. And, well, that's a story for a tragic day. But, so, what do I mean? Well, sometimes you put all your time and effort into an industry or something that you're doing, and it just doesn't work. You change jobs, it just doesn't work. And eventually, you start thinking it might be you. Is it? Maybe partially. But sometimes the particular field you've chosen is just set up for failure. And this is one of those stories. So I'll elaborate on that. This truck has this huge windshield, and there's one thing I've discovered I absolutely hate about it. Now, I don't hate it just because it's huge in one piece. The main thing I hate about it is that it is really hard to clean with a squeegee. Yeah, you almost have to pop the hood and climb up, and truthfully, my back hurts too much for that. So I have to go back to the old school ways of just seeing beyond the dirt like a Jedi. So I'll tell you a story about a buddy of mine. So I got a buddy of mine. There we are. So I got a buddy of mine who's a bull hauler. And he loved hauling cows. He went off hauling freight, and he just kind of wanted to go back to it. The part that he didn't realize early on was the first guy he hauled cows for was phenomenal. I think he was the same guy he hauled freight for also. The guy got out of cows, started hauling freight. The guy's doing a lot better. But he still wanted to haul livestock. So he goes to a company, it's a disaster. He goes to another company, it's a disaster. And it keeps going on and on. Well, I started noticing a pattern. And that was that a lot of these guys in this industry are cheap. Well, it's not that they're cheap. It's that they're screwing their drivers, and they're doing it because they can. So these guys, like one guy was like, he was getting charged a fuel surcharge for his empty miles as a company driver. You know, I was like, how? I said, you're not getting paid for that. He's like, well, they're charging me for it. I was like, can they do that? You know? And it was things of that nature that they were doing, screwing him on his taxes. I mean, it was just all sorts of weird stuff like that. And after a while, me and him had to sit down and have a talk. So basically, I had to sit down and ask the dude, straight up, what's the problem? And I talked to him enough to know that he wasn't the problem. Now, he made it his problem because he'd stayed there way too long. And he'd stayed in that industry way too long when the writing's on the wall. There's not a lot of... The problem with bull hauling is guys get into it, they love it, they can go 90 to nothing, no logbooks, or they can have logbooks, but I mean, it's pretty much the last outlaw sport in this industry. Unfortunately, a lot of the guys who do this end up getting trapped in the cycle because nobody else will hire them. Too many CSA points, too many tickets, too many this, too many that, and you end up just being a liability. And, you know, we had a talk about that. And I said, you haven't really been in that much trouble lately. He says, no. I said, you haven't been in that much trouble at all. He said, no. Basically, he's got one parking ticket. And I said, you probably ought to jump while you've still got a clean record. He didn't like that idea. I get it, but He's one of those guys that doesn't like changing jobs. In this industry, job hopping has become the norm. Unfortunately, as I've talked about in my other videos before, job hopping is detrimental to your future. Now, you understand that you're going to bounce from here to there every now and then, but when a horrible employer gets a hold of a guy who hates job hopping and really does love his work, that's when the guy ends up getting really abused with what he's doing. It goes bad there, and it goes bad quick. Well, it's a little later. We made it to Knoxville. I apologize for the video coming out a little choppy. I've had the truck about 3 weeks, and I have put almost 10,000 miles on it, so I've been working quite a lot. So having to do these videos in the midst of it all has been quite a challenge. So what do I mean with what I was talking about? When you get a good loyal employee, one of two things is going to happen. They're either going to work with that employee and make this a place, but more often than not, they just abuse the crap out of them. So this is what happens with a lot of people. But in this particular case, the guy knew he was getting screwed, and he reached out to some other people who offered him work, and they screwed him the same way and added a few wrinkles to it. So he starts bouncing around, which is something he hates doing, and I get it. So after a while, he just kind of throws up his hands, and he calls me and he says, dude, I don't know what to do. I mean, what would you do? And I'm like, you know, fill me in. So he starts telling me the story. I'm gonna walk across the street to see if I can find Red a TA shirt from Knoxville. I've bought her a t-shirt at about every truck stop that's had one, so it's kind of a thing. Several hundred. Some of the truck stops I got, they're actually closed now. He's got Jake brakes. Anyhow, it's kind of our thing, so that's t-shirts. So I'm gonna go see if I can find one. Now, before we get too far into this, let me make this really clear. I don't care what my boss does with his money. I made a decision a long time ago. I work for him. I'm not going to tell him how to spend his money. The only time I question this is when he starts screwing with my money and stops paying his bills, and it affects me. I don't like that. But when in this my friend's case, when he owes thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to repair shops, the truck gets put on a mechanic's lien because he won't pay, or gets threatened to, but his wife gets a new Escalade every year. I will question that. However, that's never happened. So he tells me the story about how they're running him, how they're paying him, and you know, basically what they're doing to trap guys into this job, because they can't hold on to people, so they kind of have to almost trap you into the job. And there's a reason they can't hold on to people, because, well, it's a horrible job. So it's just, I'm not going to go into the specifics, but he was getting charged for things he never had any business getting charged for. They were making him pay for all sorts of things that, as a company driver, he never should have. On top of being run off a 1099 as a contractor, despite he was supposed to be getting paid with a W-2 and signed all the paperwork. And this happened at a couple jobs. So it was just thievery, trickery, and just a bunch of crooks all the way around. I have one of those for my last truck. Well, that was kind of a bust. Anyhow, a lot of the stuff that they were doing to him was just borderline illegal. I think in a lot of places it could be construed as, and you ask, why don't you get a lawyer and sue them? Well, the burden of proof is on you. And a lot of times the monetary value of what's wrong is not worth the lawsuit. And these guys know that. And they've been sued by everybody, so they know the game. So he starts talking about, you know, maybe it's time for me to change what I'm pulling. Maybe it's time for me to go back to doing X, Y, and Z. And I looked at him and said, dude, think about this. Because he didn't want to go. And sometimes you just have to be a little harsh with your friends, even though you want to be supportive. But I just looked at him and said, dude, you've been 5 different jobs, or 6 different jobs, 2 of them twice. I said, it hasn't worked. It's not working. You've got a good standing offer with a former employer that will take you back in a heartbeat, because he's a hard worker. I said, go back, make some money, kind of reset. So that's what he's going to do. He's going to sit back, reset a little, and kind of figure out where he wants to be, get back to making some good money, get his feet back under him. The fact of the matter is, he was lucky because he hadn't had his driving record screwed up yet, hadn't been pulled over a bunch, hadn't gotten in a whole lot of trouble like a lot of these bull haulers tend to do. And he so he can start fresh. So I went in to go get something to eat, and apparently I can't. Every waitress in the place walked past me at least twice, looked at me, acknowledged me, and then never took my order. It's been happening a lot lately, and they wonder why nobody tips. Well, I don't know what to tell you. If you can't figure it out, I'm not going to bother writing about it. Well, it's actually a beautiful night, and I'm going to enjoy these warm nights. Got about 10 more minutes before the chicken's done in the fuel island. Sometimes eating at the fuel island's a lot better. Anyhow, he starts telling me all the stuff that these guys are doing when it comes to his pay and all that. Now, mind you, this guy's doing $15,000 weeks, and he's bringing home about $1,200 to $1,500. What's wrong with that picture? Well, there's a lot wrong with that picture. Now, as a company driver, they started making him pay a fuel surcharge on all the miles that truck ran, taking it out of his pay. Now, mind you, the surcharge is built into the rate, so I'm told, but they're making him pay loaded, empty. As a company driver, a guy who's supposed to be working off mileage and on a W-2, but they're paying him $10.99, paying him the gross after all the expenses, and then they're charging him a fuel surcharge for every mile moved. Dude, just getting raped all the way around. And he hung out a lot longer than I would have. So what's my whole point with all of this? Dude loves doing what he does. He loves bull hauling. He likes running, he just likes it all. And he's still quite a bit younger than me. But so is a lot of people. But he had to throw in the towel. And I know it hurt, because he's not a quitter. So he's going back to swinging doors. But here's the thing. He was smart enough to realize and finally accept that it wasn't working. And he basically just needed a sounding board and some confirmation. I wasn't out there to tell him what to do, but at the same time, he just needed a little bit of encouragement. So, yeah. Now, cattle hauling is a very cutthroat business. And just like with any livestock hauling, if you get with the right people, there's a lot of money to be made. You get with the wrong people, you're going to end up broke with no options. That's kind of where we're going with this video. You got to have options, guys. He hung out way too long. But he also learned that the industry itself is flawed. These people are all doing the same thing. They're screwing people because they can. They get away with it because there's no accountability to what they're doing, because a lot of it's a cash-based business, and a lot of it you can hide. There's no oversight like with our tattletale boxes and all that we got on our swinging doors. But sometimes it's just time to throw in the towel and accept defeat. And it's not really defeat. You tried something, it didn't work. You're going to go off and try something else. I never thought I'd be swinging doors either. When I started in this business, the last thing I ever wanted to do was haul van. I never wanted to haul a refrigerated trailer. But I went through a series of jobs, just like a lot of you guys did, and I learned what I was good at, what I didn't, and truthfully, swinging doors is where I've made the most money. I've hauled cars, I've hauled smoothbore tankers, I've hauled a lot of... I learned that flatbed was not my calling. I learned that a lot of things weren't my calling. I had a lot of fun, but a lot of the stuff I did, I didn't make any money doing. So, you kind of would like to find a nice, easy balance, but you can either have fun and be broke, or make some money and find your fun a little later. If something doesn't work out, that doesn't mean it's gone forever. It means you tried, it didn't work at this time, and maybe down the road you'll get another chance. Maybe this will be a stepping stone to something else. And there's no reason to get discouraged. My buddy, he's pretty discouraged because he hates things happening this way. But he knows it's for the better, and he's going to work for a good guy that he's worked for before, and he made money with this guy. So it's not really a step back. It's just more of a pause. And that's kind of how you have to look at it, you know. He's not losing anything, but he's not gaining anything really either. It's just kind of step back and kind of find his footing again and take off forward. And if everything works out, maybe eventually he can revisit this. Maybe eventually he will be where he wants to be. And this story is for you guys out there too that have been at this 3 and 4 years, that aren't kind of finding your satisfaction. You know, it'll come, you know, if you give it a chance. It will come, but you have to be patient. Let's go see if the chicken's done. And 40 minutes later, we've got chicken. Sometimes you just have to wait a while. So it's been a long couple of days of trying to get this video done, and I'm in Villa Rica, Georgia right now. I filmed this in several different places, and what I've been getting at with this whole ordeal is sometimes you got to take a step back. Sometimes you just have to face the fact that it's not working out, even though you want it to. And if you're not sure, or if you're positive and sure, just do like what my friend said. Find yourself somebody you trust. Talk to them about it. Seriously. Sometimes you just need to hear it out loud, and you need a sounding board or somebody to actually offer you a different perspective so you can make a good educated decision based on what you want. And that's the important thing. Ooh, excuse me. What do you want? You know, everybody's going to offer you advice based on what they would do, which is fine. You can take that for what it is. But at the end of the day, you're the one that has to make the decision. There's no shame in being like, dude, I can't do it anymore. You know, there's no shame in that. My buddy gave it his all, and it just wasn't working out with what he was doing, so now he's going to take a step back. And sometimes that's what you need to do. We've all been there. Oh, man. Like I said, it's been a long couple of days. But at the end of the day, you know, it has to be your decision. I want everybody to make good, educated decisions. And you have to weigh these things very carefully. You can't do these things on impulse or emotion or all that. Working's working. And when it's not working, it just, you gotta figure out a way to either make it work or, you know, go find a new sandbox to play in. I guess that's it. You know, but if you're not sure, don't be afraid to ask and get some good solid advice. You know, it's the industry. This is a hard industry to break into, and you know, you're not going to really find your place for a couple of years. I've been doing this for years, and it wasn't until about 5-6 years ago. Good night. It wasn't until 5 or 6 years ago that I really found this place, you know. I worked in a lot of places I liked, a lot of places I didn't. But I had to really just kind of find where I needed to be. And it's a journey. And it's a journey that's going to take you a lot of places, and it's a journey that you're not going to do overnight. It takes time. So, I hope in your journey, you know, you're successful. I hope you find where you need to be. But don't be afraid to stop and take a step back. Because, you know, like, I thought of this analogy today, you know, if you jump into a hole and you're already knee deep, that's not a good thing. You know, you can get out of quicksand, but if you wait till it's here, there's a good chance you're not gonna get out. So if you're knee deep in a hole right now and it's something that's not working, get out while you can still step out. That's all I'm saying. Just make good educated decisions and sound decisions and stick by them, because if you're doing them for the best for you and your family or whatever you need to do, nobody's going to fault you for that. So make good decisions and trust your gut. And if you're not sure, go find yourself a sounding board, someone to talk to, someone you trust, and just run your ideas by them. And hopefully they'll be good. So I appreciate it. Thanks for watching, guys. Keep your chin up and be successful, and we'll see you next video.